The helicopter lands where it doesn't belong, and nobody breathes. Not the guests standing in their pressed linen and afternoon heels. Not the security personnel who were, until 30 seconds ago, the most controlled people in the room. Not the string quartet, whose final note dissolves into rotor wash and hangs in the air like something that has been interrupted mid-sentence. Only Calder Knox is still breathing normally. He stands at the front of the venue, white roses bank behind him, crystal catching the noon light, and watches the helicopter settle onto the east lawn with the expression of a man who has survived every surprise life has offered him and found them all, ultimately, manageable. That expression is a mistake. But he doesn't know that yet. The bride is in the bridal suite. She has been there since 9:40 a.m., when she arrived, had her veil adjusted by a woman whose name she doesn't remember, accepted a glass of champagne she did not drink, and positioned herself by the window in a way that looks, from a distance, like composure. She is wearing a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent and holding a phone she is supposed to have surrendered to the day of coordinator 40 minutes ago. At 10:12, Amara Reyes sends the message. She uses her thumb. One deliberate press. Then she lowers the phone and holds it to the center of her chest like a compress against something that has been bleeding quietly for a very long time. No one in the suite notices. They are straightening tablecloths. They are repositioning centerpieces. They are doing the meticulous, invisible labor of making a day look effortless, and Amara Reyes, the object of the occasion, is the one thing no one is actually watching. This is not new. Hey, before we go further, if you were standing exactly where Amara is standing right now, holding evidence you were never supposed to find, with the ceremony starting in 2 hours, what's the one thing you would have needed someone to say to you to make you feel like leaving was actually possible? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. Because here is what no one talks about when they talk about women who stay too long in rooms that are slowly emptying them. It is not stupidity. It is not weakness. It is the specific, exhausting mathematics of a person who has learned to calculate the cost of leaving against the cost of remaining, and who has been given, deliberately, systematically, every reason to believe the math doesn't work in their favor. Amara Reyes is not stupid. She is someone who has spent 8 months doing arithmetic in the dark. By 10:30, the east side exit has a man standing near it who was not there before. The coat check has a new attendant who makes eye contact with the man near the exit in a way that looks, to anyone not specifically watching for it, like two strangers sharing a moment of boredom. Knox's infrastructure is efficient. It does not announce. It positions. In the bridal suite, Amara turns the phone over in her hand. Then back. The screen stays dark. She does not check for a response. She has done what she came to do, and now the only thing left is to wait and find out if she has done it in time. She is still the way a person is still when they have stopped fighting the current and started reading it. At 11:03, the rotor sound moves through the building like a frequency no one was prepared to receive. The guests at the windows see it first. Then the ones nearest the east doors. The reaction moves through the crowd in a wave, heads turning, hands raised to shade eyes, a collective reorientation of every body in the room towards something that does not fit. Knox does not turn. He smiles. The man who steps out of that helicopter is not on the guest list. He is not in any database Knox has access to under his real name. He is not a myth, despite what Knox's people have said about him in closed rooms where they believed they were speaking privately. He is Rafael Cordero. And he is already walking. 3 years before the wedding, Amara Reyes's life is organized and quiet in the way that organized, quiet lives often are, not because of peace, but because of the very specific effort required to make disorder invisible. She has an apartment in the West Loop with good light, and walls she has painted herself twice, in colors that are more decisive than the rest of her decisions. She has a position at a mid-size international trade consultancy that values her precision with contract language and her ability to read a room faster than most people can read a paragraph. She has 3 close friends who do not know each other, a standing Thursday evening run along the lakeshore, and a filing system so thorough that her colleagues have started using it as a template. She is good at structure. She built it herself, which means she knows exactly how much weight it can hold. Her father's estate settled 14 months after his death, and the number it settled at was less than half of what anyone had expected. Not because of fraud, or so the attorney said. Because of compounding decisions made over compounding years by a man who believed himself to be more insulated than he was. The outcome was a family name with no corresponding foundation. A reputation and the absence of the thing that had previously given it substance. The cruelest part of inheriting someone's name is that you also inherit the gaps they left in it. She is not struggling, exactly. But she is aware, in the way people are aware of hairline cracks and load-bearing walls, that the structure is more precarious than it appears. Calder Knox appears at a trade symposium in October. He is the keynote speaker. He is exactly as compelling as his introduction suggests, measured, original, the kind of speaker who gives you the feeling that the room has contracted slightly so that his words have less distance to travel. Afterward, at the reception, he finds her at the edge of the crowd and says something accurate about the third panel discussion that makes her laugh before she has decided to. He remembers her laugh. He tells her this later. She thinks, how? She does not say it. He calls 2 days after the symposium. He is in Amsterdam, but his attention is entirely on the conversation, and she notices this the way she notices precision in anything, with a particular, involuntary respect for the quality of the thing. Control rarely looks like control when you are inside it. It feels like being taken care of. It feels like relief. It feels like the particular luxury of having someone pay close enough attention that you stop having to pay attention to everything yourself. She tells herself she is choosing this. She tells herself it is different from her mother's choices, her father's choices, the choices that left her holding a name without a net underneath it. She does not ask herself, not yet, what it costs to be chosen this precisely. The first 6 months are easy in the way that manufactured things are easy, frictionless, consistent, calibrated. He knows her coffee order after the second date. He sends white roses because she mentioned, once, in passing, that her grandmother had kept them in the front hallway every summer. He does not make a production of the gesture. He simply arrives with them. Puts them in a vase on her counter. Does not wait to be thanked. Something in her quiets around him. That is the thing she keeps returning to later, when she is trying to understand how it happened, not the charm, not the resources, not the specific, expensive architecture of his attention. It is the quieting. The sense that a frequency she has been trying to manage for years has finally been turned down. She does not wonder, at the time, who is holding the dial. The engagement announcement is met with the specific response of people who have just been told something they were expecting. Her friends ask careful questions and listen to her answers with the focused attention of people looking for the things she is not saying. She says all the right things. She believes most of them. One evening, 3 weeks after the engagement, she finds herself in his study while he is on a call in the next room. She is not looking for anything. She is just present in the way people are present in spaces they are learning to consider theirs. The desk is clean. A folder near the corner, slightly misaligned. She straightens it. Then she notices it already had an alignment. It was exactly where someone put it. She has moved it. She puts it back, not where she moved it, but where it was, and leaves the study without touching anything else. In the next room, Calder's voice through the door is steady and unhurried. She stands in the hallway for a moment. Then she goes to make tea. She does not think about the folder again. Not until later. Not until it is one of 50 things she will line up in sequence and understand, finally, as a single sentence she was never supposed to read. She notices the second phone 6 weeks before the wedding, but that is not when the cracks begin. The cracks begin on a Tuesday in December, when Calder tells her, gently, practically, in the voice he uses for information he is delivering as if it is neutral, that her friend Dessa has been saying things. What kind of things? Things that suggest, he says, a certain pattern of concern. Possibly projection. He has heard from someone, he does not say who, that Dessa has been speaking about Amara in terms that are, he pauses here, not supportive of her choices. He says this with his hand on the counter between them, not on her, and his expression is patient in a way that offers her nowhere to push back against. She does not call Dessa that week. She tells herself she will give it time. She tells herself she is not avoiding the conversation. She is just finding the right moment. 3 weeks later, Dessa stops calling. She thought she was being protected. The clarity arrives later, quiet and absolute. She was being quarantined. The second phone is on his nightstand on a Wednesday morning, and this is unusual because his nightstand is otherwise a study in deliberate minimalism. One lamp, one book, the specific absence of clutter that signals a person who knows exactly what their environment communicates. The phone is not a primary device. It is smaller. Older. The kind of phone that exists, in her professional experience with contract language, when a primary device is insufficient. She does not touch it. She sees it, and she moves past it, and she goes to the bathroom, and she brushes her teeth, and she looks at her own face in the mirror for approximately 30 seconds longer than necessary. The phone is on her mind the way a sound is on your mind after the room goes quiet, not because it is still happening, but because the silence around it has a shape. At breakfast, Calder asks about the venue coordinator. She answers. He pours coffee. His hands are steady and certain, and she watches them the way she has started watching things, not for what they do but for what they don't. He already knows something she never told him. She realizes this between one sentence and the next, sitting at his kitchen island with a coffee she does not finish. She has not told him about the conversation with her brother last week, the one where Marcus called from his apartment in Phoenix, and they talked for 40 minutes about their mother, about the estate, about the specific fatigue of being children of a man who is more present in his absence than he ever was in his life. She has not told Calder. But last night, during dinner, he mentioned Marcus in passing, a small, precise reference. Your brother mentioned something similar when we spoke last month. He moved past it immediately. Changed the subject. Did not seem to notice that she had gone very still. She had not known they were in contact. She had not been told. The most dangerous surveillance is the kind that knows exactly how much to let you know it sees. She finishes getting dressed. She is professional. She is assembled. She leaves his apartment at 8:15 and takes the elevator down alone and stands on the sidewalk for a moment in November air that is clean and very cold, and she fills her lungs with it, and she looks at the building and she thinks. How long? Not what. She already knows the approximate shape of what. She has known it the way you know about a thing you are not yet ready to hold in your hands, at a distance, with peripheral vision, carefully. How long is the new question? She does not answer it on the sidewalk. She puts her phone in her bag and she flags a cab and she goes to work. But that night, alone in her apartment, she has kept the apartment. She told him it was sentimentality. It is actually the one room in her life he has not yet rearranged. She opens her laptop. She opens 3 windows. She begins, carefully and methodically, to look. She finds, by 1 a.m., enough to make her close the laptop and sit in the dark for a while. She finds, by 2 a.m., enough to make her open it again. At the bottom of the 7th document, a logistics contract filed with a subsidiary she has traced through 4 name changes, there is a number, a date of entry, and a project classification. The classification is a single word. She reads it. She does not sleep. Calder Knox is 41 years old and has built everything he owns on a simple premise, that most people will accept the version of reality they are given if it is presented with sufficient consistency and sufficient warmth. He is not wrong. He is also, in a way that takes Amara the better part of 8 months to fully articulate to herself, not entirely human in the way she had understood that word to mean. Not monstrous, nothing so theatrical. Just arranged. Every gesture considered. Every warmth deployed. The smile that reaches his eyes because he has practiced reaching it there. The patience that looks like affection because patience, offered consistently in the right register, produces the same neurological response as affection in most people. She is not most people. But she is not immune. The loyalty test happens in February, At a dinner party at the home of a man whose name she has since seen in a Federal Watch document. There are 12 people at the table. The food is extraordinary. The conversation is the specific kind of conversation that happens among people who have a great deal and are accustomed to speaking about the world as though it belongs to them, which it largely does. Midway through the main course, one of Knox's associates, a man named Parr who holds 3 passports she will later be able to name, makes an observation about a mutual colleague. The observation is designed to land as a question. It concerns a woman who works at Amara's firm. The implication is specific. Power doesn't ask if you are loyal. It creates situations where you prove it without realizing. Amara answers carefully. She does not agree with the implication. She does not name it directly. She takes the narrow path between corroboration and refusal, and she navigates it with the precision of someone who does this kind of calibration in contracts for a living. Under the table, Calder's hand finds hers. One deliberate press of his thumb against her knuckles. The conversation moves on. Parr laughs at something. The wine is refilled. She does not speak again about the colleague. She does not speak again about much, for the rest of the dinner. And Calder, across the table at dessert, watches her with an expression she has learned to read as satisfaction, the expression of a man who has just received a return on an investment he made very carefully over a very long period of time. She smiles back. Her face does not require her participation anymore, in these rooms. It performs. The week after the dinner party, she receives a promotion. It is presented to her as deserved, her record, her billing hours, her client relationships. All true. All documented. She also knows that one of her firm's largest new clients is a referral from Knox's network. She knows because she handled the intake. She knows because she is very good at her job and she reads everything. The promotion and the referral arrive in the same week. She does not mention the timing to anyone. She files it in the same internal place where she has been filing everything else, the calls she wasn't supposed to overhear, the names she wasn't supposed to recognize, the gaps in his schedule that align, with a precision that troubles her, with events she reads about afterward in trade publications and doesn't mention. There is a conversation in March, 11 days before she finds the documents, that she will return to more than any other. He asks her, over coffee in his kitchen, how she feels about transparency. It is a philosophical question. He frames it as such. He says it the way people say what's your love language or where do you see yourself in 5 years, lightly, with the ease of someone asking about preferences rather than taking inventory. She answers honestly. She talks about the professional value of disclosure. She talks about how transparency is the structural load-bearing element of trust. He listens. He nods. He says, exactly. And then he smiles at her with the specific warmth of a man who has just confirmed something he needed to confirm, and he asks if she wants more coffee. She does not want more coffee. She says yes. She sits with the cup in her hands and she looks at him over the rim, and she understands, without yet being able to name it in full, that the question was not philosophical. It was a calibration. He was measuring her answer against what he already knew about her. And the thing that is starting to live behind her sternum now, cold, precise, irrefutable, is this: the discrepancy between what he was measuring and what he already knew is the shape of a trap she has been walking into, step by step, for 8 months. She sets the cup down. He is talking about the rehearsal dinner. Times. Catering. The specific preference he has for things to run exactly as arranged. She looks at his hands around his coffee cup. She looks at the confidence in them. She thinks, he has never once asked me what I want. He has offered. He has provided. He has anticipated and delivered and curated. But he has never asked? And she is only now, in March, with 11 days left, understanding the difference between those two things, and understanding that for someone like Calder Knox, the difference is not an oversight. It is the entire architecture. She finds the folder 4 days later, looking for something else entirely. That is always how it goes. Not the dramatic search. not the intentional confrontation with the truth you have been preparing yourself to find. It is the wrong drawer, the misaligned tab, the document that is sitting on top of the one you came for, and then you are reading something you cannot unread, and the room is very quiet, and your hands are very still. The lease agreement Calder offered to put in her name is in the third subfolder of a directory labeled with an address she recognizes as one of his secondary properties. She opens the directory. She finds the lease. She also finds 11 other documents. She does not close them. Her professional mind does what it always does when presented with dense contract language. It reads. Methodically. Linearly. Without editorializing. She reads the way she was trained to read, the way she reads everything that matters, as if the document is a system to be understood and not a revelation to be survived. The moment you realize you have leverage is the moment you understand how dangerous your situation really is. The first document is a corporate filing. She reads it and finds 3 names she does not recognize structured around a logistics subsidiary she has never heard of that is registered in a jurisdiction she knows, from her work, is commonly used for a specific category of financial arrangement. The second document is a contract addendum. Standard format. The party of the first part is a company that does not appear to have a public presence. The party of the second part is a name she knows. Her name. Not as a signatory. As a category. She reads the line 3 times. She is precise about this. She is not going to carry a misreading of something this significant. The third time, it says what it said the first time. She is listed, her name, her educational credentials, her professional affiliations, a concise summary of her family history that is more accurate than anything she has ever provided, as a strategic asset placement effective 18 months ago. 18 months ago, she did not know Calder Knox. This symposium where they met was 11 months ago. She sits with this arithmetic for a moment. It is a very specific kind of arithmetic. The kind that rearranges everything that came before it. She continues reading. The sixth document takes her 20 minutes to parse because the financial language is structured to resist parsing. But she is very good at this. She follows every chain. She maps every entity against the others. She builds it in the margins of her working memory the way she builds complex contracts, layer by layer, with the understanding that each layer only makes sense in relation to the ones beneath it. By the time she reaches the routing codes in the sixth document, she has a complete sentence. The sentence is not about money. It is about movement. People-shaped movement, organized with logistics language, routed through the same subsidiary networks that appear in Knox's legitimate operations. Not a separate structure. Not a parallel business. The same infrastructure, serving 2 functions, indistinguishable from the outside. She had read about this model once, in a federal indictment that crossed her desk as a reference document in a client matter. She had read it and understood it abstractly, the way you understand crimes that exist at a scale too large to feel personal. She feels it now. Her hands are very still on the keyboard. The apartment is quiet. It is 1:17 a.m. She closes the sixth document. She opens it again. She needs to be sure. She is going to be sure. The seventh document contains names. She recognizes 3 of them. 2 from Knox's professional network, people she has met, shaken hands with, eaten meals beside in rooms with very good lighting. 1 from a news article about a federal investigation that was concluded without charges 2 years ago. The same investigation Knox has mentioned twice, in passing, as an example of regulatory overreach. She opens a browser window on a separate device, her personal laptop, not the one she uses at his apartment, the one she has kept in her own apartment in a drawer she has not thought carefully about until now. She runs the names against public records. Court filings. Corporate registries. She finds enough in 40 minutes to understand that what she has found is not a fragment. It is a map. And her name is on it. Placed there, in a specific category, with a specific function, by a man who met her at a symposium 8 months after she was already a line item in a strategy document. She sits back. The window across from her desk shows the city, lights at this hour, the particular orange of Chicago in winter, the specific density of a skyline that has watched a very large number of private catastrophes with complete indifference. She is not crying. This surprises her later. At the time, it does not feel like anything except clarity, very cold, very clean, the kind of clarity that arrives when you stop asking yourself whether what you see is real and start asking yourself what to do about it. She reaches for the older phone. The one she has kept charged in the drawer, for reasons she has never examined, since she moved it there 9 weeks ago after a conversation she is only now understanding the full meaning of. She opens a browser. She finds a name. Then she opens a new message. And she begins to type. She does not type quickly. She types the way she writes everything that matters, carefully, in full, with the understanding that the words she chooses in the next 20 minutes may be the most load-bearing words she has ever selected. She attaches 3 documents. Then 2 more. Then a 6th that she almost doesn't include, and then does, because it is the one that makes the map legible to someone who has not spent the last 3 hours building it in their head. She reads the message once. She sends it. Then she sits in her apartment, in the quiet, and she waits. Outside, the city holds its lights steady against the dark. She does not sleep. The wedding is in 6 weeks. And somewhere across the city, or not across the city, she does not know where he is, she does not know anything yet about what comes next. A phone receives a message that will, in exactly 43 days, change the arrangement of everything. She does not know that yet. She only knows that she has done it. That the information is no longer only hers. That the weight of it, which she has been carrying alone since 1 a.m. 4 nights ago, has been redistributed into the world. Her hands finally unclench. She looks at them. She does not recognize quite yet what she has just set in motion. But she will. The response comes at 4:47 a.m. Not a text. A call, 1 ring, then silence, then the line opens and stays open without anyone speaking first, which is its own kind of answer. She picks up. The voice on the other end is even. Unhurried. The voice of someone who has received information like this before and knows that the correct response to it is not urgency but precision. I have what you sent, Rafael Cordero says. Don't send anything else from that device. Don't access those files again from any network connected to his properties. Can you do that? It is not a question. Yes, she says. I need 3 weeks. She looks at the window. The city. The orange light. The wedding is in 6 weeks, she says. A pause. Brief. I know. The line closes. She sits with the phone in her hand for a long time afterward, in the quiet of 4:51 a.m., and she understands that she has just handed the most dangerous information she has ever held to a man she has never met, based on documents she was not supposed to find, acting on an instinct she cannot fully explain to herself. She also understands that this is the first decision she has made in 8 months that belongs entirely to her. It wasn't one thing that broke her. It was the accumulation. The way a structure doesn't fail at the moment the last weight is added, but at the moment you finally look at it honestly and understand that the failure was always inevitable, that the whole thing was holding by the specific grace of your own refusal to see it. She sees it now. She puts the phone back in the drawer. She goes to her closet and finds the clothes she needs for the day. She showers. She makes coffee. She does all of this with the careful, methodical attention of someone who is performing normalcy as a professional skill and is very, very good at it. At 8:15, she arrives at Knox's apartment for a breakfast that he has arranged, a wedding planning session, the venue coordinator joining them at 9, a florist at 10:30. She sits across from him at his kitchen island and she answers questions about centerpieces and ceremony music and the specific arrangement of the reception seating. She does not look at the nightstand. She does not think about what is in it. She thinks about centerpieces. Calder Knox, across the table, is precisely as warm as he always is. He touches her hand when the coordinator says something that requires a united response. He defers to her preferences with the practiced ease of a man who has learned that deference, deployed selectively, is its own form of authority. She prefers white roses, she tells the coordinator. Knox smiles. She smiles back. The coordinator writes it down. Underneath the table, her foot is perfectly still. Her hands are perfectly still. Everything about her is still in the specific way of a person who has trained themselves to stillness because the alternative is to let something show. The second week, she finds the thing she was not looking for. She is not at his apartment. She is at her firm, running a conflict check on a new client intake, when a name in the incoming matter description connects, in the specific, instantaneous way that connections happen when you have spent 2 weeks building a map in your head, to a name in the 6th document. She closes the conflict check. She opens it again. The new client is not a person. It is a corporate entity, a logistics holding company, and the matter is a contract dispute involving a subsidiary that, on its face, is entirely unremarkable. Standard commercial litigation. The kind of work her firm handles 3 times a week. She runs the entity chain. It takes her 40 minutes. At the end of it, she is looking at a corporate structure that links, through 4 intermediary entities, to a subsidiary that appears in the documents she sent to Cordero. The new client referral came from Knox's network. The matter involves Knox's infrastructure. And she is listed, in the intake form, as the preferred supervising attorney. She sits back in her chair. Her monitor hums. The office around her continues its ordinary afternoon. Phones, keyboards, the low murmur of people doing ordinary work in ordinary rooms. She picks up her phone. She does not call Knox. She opens the browser on her personal device, on a network Knox does not control, and she sends one message to a number she has memorized. They're routing something through my firm. I'm on the intake. The response comes in 4 minutes. Don't touch the matter. Conflict yourself out. Say nothing about why. She does. Her supervising partner accepts the recusal without much interest. These things happen. Conflicts happen. She gives a clean, professional explanation that has the virtue of being partially true, and she returns to her other work, and she sits at her desk until 7 p.m. doing the specific, careful labor of a person who is waiting for a structure to either hold or break. That night, she eats dinner alone in her apartment. Rice and fish. The window open a crack despite the cold because she needs the air. She eats slowly and she thinks about the shape of what Knox has built, not just the financial network, not just the routing, but the comprehensiveness of it. The way it reaches. The way it has reached into her firm without her knowing. The way it had reached her, at a symposium, before she knew it was reaching. She had not been found. She had been selected. She had not been chosen. She had been placed. The difference between those two things is the difference between a life and a position, and she is sitting in her apartment eating rice and fish and understanding, finally, the full distance between them. It wasn't one thing. It was the architecture. The third week, Cordero sends one message: we have enough. Stay the course. She reads it twice. Deletes it. She goes to the venue walkthrough the following morning in a cream blazer and heeled boots, and she tastes the proposed menu options and gives considered feedback on the lighting, and she tells the coordinator that yes, the white roses in the entryway are exactly right. Calder Knox, beside her, puts his hand on the small of her back. She does not stiffen. She is very good at this now. The walkthrough ends. They leave together. His driver takes them back across the city. He talks about the seating arrangement. She listens. Somewhere in this city, or not in this city, a man she has never met is building a case from evidence she handed him in the dark at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. She looks out the car window. 6 days until the wedding. Knox asks her, 5 days before the wedding, whether she has heard from her brother recently. She is at his desk when he says it, signing a document, a property transfer, straightforward. Her name going on a title and a gesture he has framed as security, as love, as yours. She signs with her usual precision, and she looks up. Marcus? Not this week. Why? He is standing near the window. The light behind him makes his expression harder to read. He called the office, Knox says. Looking for you. I told him you'd been busy. She puts the pen down. He called your office. He couldn't reach you on your cell, apparently. She looks at her phone, which has received no missed calls from her brother this week. She knows this because she checks. She checks everything now, with the specific, comprehensive attention of a person who knows that the gaps in information are where the structure lives. I'll call him tonight, she says. Of course. Knox's expression is pleasant. Patient. He picks up the signed document and adds it to a folder on his desk. He seemed concerned. I may have reassured him a little too well. He mentioned he's been talking to someone at my firm's partner organization. A consultant. I didn't catch the name. He says this the way he says everything that is actually a question, as information, as casual disclosure, as the sharing of something unremarkable. She hears it as what it is. He knows she has been in contact with someone. He does not know who. He is testing the shape of what she knows by watching how she receives this. The most dangerous question is not the one that sounds like a threat. It is the one that sounds like concern. I'm sure Marcus is fine, she says. He worries. He does. Knox smiles. It's a family trait. She takes her bag from the chair. She tells him she has an early dinner with a colleague. He says he'll have the driver ready at 7. She says she'll take a cab. He pauses, almost nothing, a half second, and says of course. In the elevator, she counts floors. Ground floor. Out the door. 2 blocks east on foot, which is not the direction of any dinner, which she does not have. She calls Marcus from a corner on Wacker Drive, standing in wind that cuts through her blazer. Marcus picks up on the second ring. He did not call Knox's office. He has not spoken to anyone at Knox's firm. He has not been in contact with a consultant. He asks if she is okay. She says yes. She says she will explain later. She hangs up and stands on the corner for a moment with the wind pulling at her hair, and she looks at the traffic and she thinks about the specific nature of what Knox just did, the graceful, almost elegant construction of a story designed to do 3 things simultaneously. Test whether she is in contact with someone outside his network, remind her that her brother is someone he has access to. And do both of these things in a register so casual, so warm, that she would have had no legitimate grounds for objection. This is what she has been living inside for 8 months. Not cruelty. Precision. That night, she lies in her apartment, and she looks at the ceiling and she thinks about the version of herself that arrived at that symposium 11 months ago, assembled, precise, carrying a name without a net, and she thinks about how perfectly she must have looked, from a certain angle, like someone who could be used. She is not angry about this. She is past anger. She is in the specific cold terrain on the other side of anger where the only thing that remains is clarity and the decisions clarity demands. She sends one message to the number she has memorized. He knows I'm in contact with someone. He doesn't know who. Cordero's response takes 11 minutes, confirmed. We move on the original timeline. 4 days. She reads it. Deletes it. She does not sleep for a very long time. The following morning, she goes to Knox's apartment for a pre-wedding family dinner. His associate Parr and 2 other men she has placed in the document map, their partners, the specific performance of normalcy that this world requires at its edges. She dresses carefully. She arrives exactly on time. She sits at his table, and she eats his food and she answers every question with the precision of a woman who has spent 11 months learning exactly how this world speaks, and what it expects in return. Parr, across the table, makes a joke about cold feet. The table laughs. She laughs. Knox watches her. She meets his eyes. She holds them. 4 days. The night before the wedding, she goes back through everything. Not the documents. She has not touched those files in 3 weeks, as Cordero instructed. Not the messages. She deletes those as she receives them, the practice now automatic, a form of professional hygiene. What she goes through is memory. She sits in her apartment, the one she kept, the one with the walls she painted herself, the one room in her life that was never rearranged by someone else, and she goes back through it. Not looking for the evidence. She has the evidence. She goes back looking for herself, the version of her that was present through all of it, and chose, again and again, in small and large ways, not to fully see. She has been very careful about blame. She understands that systems like the one Knox built are designed specifically to make the people inside them complicit in the management of their own blindness. She understands this professionally, structurally, as a fact about the mechanics of control. Understanding it has not made it easier to sit with. The truth wasn't hidden from her. It was just easier not to name it. She thinks about the folder she straightened in his study and put back where she found it, and then left the room without touching anything else. She thinks about the dinner party and the thumb against her knuckles. She thinks about Dessa going quiet. She thinks about her brother's name mentioned in a voice of casual warmth, and what she did with the discomfort of it. The specific way she had taken the feeling and placed it in the internal archive she had been building for months, the one she never opened during the day. She had been very good at the archive. She had been opening it, in small increments, in the dark. And the thing about opening a thing in increments in the dark is that each installment feels manageable on its own. It is only when you lay it all out in sequence, in light, that the full sentence becomes visible. She thinks about the line item with her name on it. The project classification. The 18 months of planning that preceded the symposium where they met. She had been a candidate before she was a person, in his system. She had been selected before she was known. She had smiled across a reception room at a man who had already filed her away under a category she was never told existed, and she had thought, he remembers what I said about roses. She had thought, this is what it feels like to be seen. She sets the thought down. She does not let it run. This is the other thing she has learned, in the dark weeks of the archive, the difference between understanding and excavating. She can understand what happened without spending the rest of her life digging in it. She can name the thing without living inside the naming. But tonight she lets herself sit with the inventory. One time. Complete. She thinks about the first date, and the second, and the moment she decided to trust, not as a leap but as a series of small surrenders, each one building on the last, each one feeling less like a choice and more like an inevitability. She thinks about how deliberately and carefully, and specifically that feeling of inevitability was constructed. The cruelest part is not what was done to her. It is that for a long time, a significant, undeniable, 8-month stretch of time, she had found ways to make it feel like something else. She knew how to be honest with other people's contracts. She had spent years learning to read the gaps between language and intention, the places where words were chosen specifically because they were accurate but not complete. She had not known how to read her own life with the same precision. Now she does. She makes tea. She drinks it. She washes the cup and dries it, and puts it back in its place on the shelf. She goes to the drawer. She takes out the old phone. She looks at it. She thinks about the message she sent 5 weeks ago in the dark at 1 a.m., and she thinks about what it cost her to send it, not the risk, she had already accounted for the risk, but the specific internal cost of being the person who sends that message. Of deciding that her name on a document in a system she was never shown was not something she was willing to carry alone. She had always been taught, in the specific way that women with her particular combination of education and background are taught, that the correct response to a problem is analysis and patience and the careful, private management of one's own conclusions. She had been wrong about that. Some problems are too large to manage privately. Some truths are too heavy to carry in the archive. Some things have to go into the world. She puts the phone back. She goes to bed. She does not sleep immediately. She lies in the specific dark of a room that belongs entirely to her, and she listens to the building settle, and she thinks about tomorrow. Not the wedding. Not the dress. Not the white roses at a venue she will never stand inside again. She thinks about tomorrow as the day she stops being a line item in someone else's system. That is enough. That is, it turns out, more than enough. She closes her eyes. At some point, she does not know when, she sleeps. In the morning, she gets up. She gets dressed. She goes. The venue is exactly as it was designed to be. White roses. Crystal catching noon light. The quiet industry of people who have been paid to make a day look inevitable. The string quartet. The guests arranged in rows with the specific uniformity of people who have been told where to stand and have complied. Amara is in the bridal suite. She is in the dress. She has been in the dress since 9:40, and it fits the way things fit when someone who has been studying your measurements for 8 months selects them, precisely, comprehensively, with the specific attention of someone who treats perfection as a form of ownership. She does not look at the dress. She looks at her phone. 10:04, 10:07, 10:09. At 10:12 she opens the message she drafted last night, and she reads it once and she sends it. Then she puts the phone against her chest, and she stands at the window and she waits. By 10:30 the east side positioning has changed. She tracks it through the window reflection. The man near the exit. The coat check attendant who is not an attendant. The murmured exchange she cannot hear but can read in the body language of two people coordinating under the instruction of someone who anticipated disruption and has prepositioned against it. Knox anticipated disruption. He did not anticipate the specific disruption that is coming. She knows this because she spent 3 weeks, at Cordero's direction, doing nothing differently. She smiled. She signed. She attended the dinner. She laughed at Parr's joke. She gave Knox nothing to move against. At 10:58 she hears it, faint at first, then not faint at all, the rotor sound that fills the room from the floor up, that makes the crystal on the side table shiver, that makes every conversation in the building hesitate. She does not move from the window. She watches the lawn. The helicopter sets down on the east grass with the calm precision of something that was always going to land there. The door opens. One man. No entourage. No performance. Rafael Cordero steps onto the grass and walks. She has imagined this moment. She has not imagined what she would feel during it. She feels, now, that she cannot entirely name it. It is not relief, exactly, and it is not fear, and it is not triumph. It is something quieter and more specific than any of those things. It is the feeling of watching the last piece of a structure you built in the dark, over weeks, finally becoming visible in full daylight. Knox is at the front of the venue. She cannot see his face from here. She does not need to. She picks up the small bag she packed this morning. Nothing theatrical. A change of clothes. Her passport. The personal laptop. The things you take when you know you are not coming back. The door to the bridal suite opens. The coordinator enters, already speaking. She stops when she sees Amara standing at the window with the bag. Amara looks at her. Please tell Mr. Knox that I am not available. Then she walks past the coordinator and out of the suite and into the hallway, and she moves toward the east side stairwell because she memorized the building layout 3 weeks ago, and she knows which stairwell opens onto the east lawn. The hallway is empty. For about 15 seconds. Then it is not. 2 men from Knox's positioning have corrected faster than she expected. They are not rough, they are precise, which is worse. One moves to her left, one to her right, and the one on the right says, in a voice calibrated to sound like helpfulness, Ms. Reyes. Mr. Knox would like a moment before. Move. It comes out flat. Present. The voice of someone who has spent 8 months learning how this world speaks and has decided, today, to stop translating. They don't move. She looks at the one on the right. The Federal Relay Station at the 40-mile marker, she says, has been receiving a continuous transmission from equipment in that helicopter since it landed. The transmission includes real-time audio and positioning data. Everything happening in this building right now is already documented. A beat. Move. They move. She goes through the stairwell door and down 2 flights and out onto the east lawn, and the rotor wash hits her, the dress, her hair, the white roses in their outdoor arrangements catching the air and bending. Cordero is crossing the lawn toward her. Behind her, through the building, she can hear the specific quality of a room changing, guests reorienting, voices rising in pitch, the first sound of a situation that has stopped being controlled. He reaches her. He looks at her for 1 second. Not at the dress. At her face. He says, low and even, "You're coming with me?" And she says, "I know." From inside the building, the sound of Knox's voice, controlled, still, professionally smooth, reaches them across the lawn. He is telling his security to stand down. He is not telling them why. She understands in this moment that he has realized. That he is running the arithmetic. That the smile he is wearing in there, visible to every guest in that room, is costing him something significant to maintain. Good. She walks across the east lawn toward the helicopter. She does not look back. She is not doing this for the looking back. She is doing it for the document with her name on it, and the 6th routing map, and Dessa's last call that went unanswered, and her brother's name spoken in a warm voice over breakfast like a hand laid on something to show it was reachable. She is doing it for the 8 months of archive. She gets in the helicopter. The door closes. The rotor pitch changes. And Knox, standing at the front of a venue full of his carefully assembled guests, hears the sound of the helicopter lifting off, and for the first time in a very long time, the room does not rearrange the way he told it to. The arrest happens on a Tuesday. She is not there. She is in her apartment, the one she came back to, the one with the walls she painted herself, drinking coffee and reading a filing that her attorney has forwarded, the first of what will be a very long sequence of filings in a very long proceeding. She reads it with the same precision she has always brought to contract language, and she marks the sections that matter, and she sets it aside. Outside, a federal agency is conducting the kind of operation that does not involve cameras. No staged moment. No press statement at the steps of a building. Just the specific, procedural machinery of a system doing, finally, what systems are supposed to do when the evidence is comprehensive and the structure is visible, and there is no longer any question of what was built, or who built it. Calder Knox sits in a lobby chair in a building he believed he controlled, and he does not resist. She reads this in a brief summary from Cordero's attorney. 1 paragraph. The kind of paragraph that contains, in its careful plainness, the whole shape of a man who built his entire life on the premise that systems bend around him, and who is discovering, in a lobby chair on a Tuesday morning, that some systems don't bend. Delayed justice doesn't announce itself. It doesn't give you the dramatic scene you imagined. It gives you a Tuesday. She folds the summary. She finishes her coffee. The investigation takes months and she is part of it in the specific, circumscribed way of someone who cooperated fully and documented everything and is now the kind of witness whose precision makes a federal attorney's case load easier. She goes into rooms and she answers questions and she uses the same voice she uses for everything that matters, even, measured, complete. She does not see Knox during this period. She does not need to. The trial, when it happens, proceeds without her physical presence for most of it. Her documentation does the work. This is what she built it to do. Par pleads in the 2nd month. 3 of the other names from the 6th document enter agreements in the 3rd. Knox's legal team attempts, for 6 weeks, to construct an alternate narrative around the timeline, to argue that the project classification was a categorization error, that her name in the document was administrative, that the routing maps are susceptible to multiple readings. Her annotated analysis of those documents, submitted as a supplementary exhibit, takes that argument apart in 47 pages. She does not attend the sentencing. She is, on that day, in a building on the west side of the city, a commercial space she has been renovating since February, with the help of a contractor Cordero recommended and a grant she applied for and received on the strength of a proposal she wrote herself. The space is not finished yet. The walls are bare concrete, and the windows are new, and the light comes in clean and direct in the way that light does in rooms where something is just beginning. The organization she is founding does not have a dramatic name. It is called the Reyes Navigation Project, because she could not think of anything more accurate than that. The idea that what the women who come here will need most is not rescue but navigation. Maps. The specific, practical knowledge of how systems work and where the exits are and what it costs to use them and how to build the resources to pay that cost. She knows something about all of that. The work is not glamorous. It is grant applications and board meetings and the ongoing, meticulous labor of building something that will outlast the event that made it necessary. There are days when it feels large and days when it feels impossible and days when a woman sits across from her in the still unfinished conference room and tells her something Amara recognizes, a specific quality of accommodation, a practiced management of one's own discomfort, and Amara looks at her and says simply, "You already know. You've known for a while." And the woman's face does the thing that Amara's face did in an apartment at 1 a.m. over a folder she was never supposed to open. It goes very still. And then it comes back. That is the work. Rafael Cordero is present at the edges of it, not at the center, not in the way that would make her work his, but in the specific way of someone who understands that what she is building is hers and that his role is perimeter and resource and the particular, steady kind of presence that doesn't require acknowledgement to be felt. They do not have a name for what they are. She is not in a hurry to find one. She knows, now, the difference between being chosen and being seen. She is learning, slowly, what it feels like when someone lets you remain the author of your own story. She is in no hurry about that, either. What she did on the morning of that wedding was not an act of courage. She wants to be precise about this. Courage implies that the alternative was reasonable, that staying would have been an acceptable option she was simply brave enough to turn from. The alternative was not reasonable. The alternative was a system she had already decided she was not willing to be part of. She made a call. Cordero answered. And the rest of it, the months of evidence, the Tuesday arrests, the 47 pages, the West Side building with its bare concrete walls and its clean new light, the rest of it was the consequence of two people, on opposite ends of a phone line at 4:47 a.m., deciding that precision mattered more than cover. She didn't get rescued. She made a decision that had been building in the archive for a very long time. And then she opened the door. Some structures hold because people choose not to name what they see. The moment someone names it, clearly, on the record, with documentation, the structure becomes visible. And a structure that is visible can be dismantled. That is the only thing she would want anyone to take from this. Name what you see. Even in the dark. Even alone. Even when the cost of naming it seems higher than the cost of the archive. Name it. If this story moved you, if you felt that specific, slow-burning recognition of someone finally deciding that the truth is worth the cost of telling it, drop it in the comments. Tell me where you were when it hit you. And if you're new here, this channel exists for stories like this one. Stories about the specific courage it takes to look at what's right in front of you and choose honesty over comfort. Stories that don't let you look away. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. The next story is going to cost you something to watch. And you won't be able to stop.